Well, hello, Patrick. How are you doing? Welcome to the Ground Investigation podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm good. Good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not doing too bad. How did you sort of get started in ground investigations? And I wonder if you could give us a brief background just to kick things off with.
Yeah, right. Well, brief background. I don't know how far back you want me to go, but no, I went to Plymouth University way back in 2011. Did a great course, physical geography and geology. It was more heavily geology, but it was basically geomorphological stuff as well as, it was a good course in Plymouth. And then from there, ended up going into world of engineering geology and ground investigation. Plymouth seems to kick out quite a lot of engineering geologists. They had quite a good course when I was there, run by a guy called Jim Griffiths, and then Andy Merritt. But that was a rough background, and ended up in ground investigation.
Okay, so I see you've got quite a varied experience so far in ground investigations. You've also managed to get yourself some really good work experience with Natural Resources Wales and the British Geological Society. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that was way back when I was an undergrad, really. I remember when I was in uni, we did this module on like personal development, or basically how to get yourself a job, or how to put yourself out there, which is a good initiative. And the big thing of that was like explore your network. Like they sort of drummed into how important your network is, and obviously for you, your network is everything, isn't it? Like, and I think for all of us it is. Definitely. Yeah. They encouraged us to explore our network, see if we knew anyone with anything, and then go after it from that point of view. Luckily, my mother works for Natural Resources Wales. She's downstairs beavering away at the moment. She works in water quality, has done for years. Obviously, she worked for the Environment Agency before that, and then when they brought in the forestry and fisheries and all that, she now works for NRW. So she hooked me up with some of the contaminated mine guys, some of the water samplers. I did a little bit of water sampling with them, a little bit of, and then just from having chats with them and spending the day at these sites and things, you learn a bit about it and see what's going on. And I think actually I ended up using it as like a case study for one of the exams. You know what I mean? Like it just turned into something I could use. So that was fun, and we were in mid Wales and it absolutely bucketed down. So that was a good start point for future activities. Anyway, but and then she also managed to put me in touch with a fella she used to work with called Gareth Farr, who was a hydrogeologist at the time he was at the BGS. He was working on ground source heat potential of the South Wales coalfields, and I think just general coalfields. I think he's moved to Coal Authority now, but anyway, So I managed to tail him for a week, and I was doing some like data entry stuff and like digitizing little bits and bobs and stuff. But that, again, it was as an undergrad who didn't have a great deal else going. It was a pretty cool experience, and pretty lucky to get hooked up like that, really. But definitely like exploring your network and trying to make the most of it was the key take from me, I think.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Your network is your net worth, I've heard people say before. So growing your network all the time is definitely. I mean, I've sort of concentrated on growing the LinkedIn. I don't really bother with any other social media particularly, because LinkedIn is kind of where it all happens really for us in the engineering world. But you do get a lot of drillers on Facebook, so that is a definite something at which we'd go into, but no, it's good, and especially if you have your mum working along the industry somewhere, then that always works out well as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think just from that's interest in the outdoors and being out there and stuff, that sort of, if you want to go as far back as that, parents are both quite outdoorsy and stuff. Dad's an ecologist, so just like I've always been around outdoorsy stuff and that, and I think that probably sent me down a certain path. But yeah,
it certainly helps having some sort of prior experience with that sort of thing with going into ground investigation. Do you think it was important in helping you decide what direction to go in your career, and did it just stand you in good stead for the subsequent companies which you worked in?
I mean, it's not directly applicable to world of engineering. The stuff that I was doing wasn't directly applicable, but it did sort of. And by that point, I was pretty set that I wanted to go into ground investigation and engineering geology. But generally, it did cement the fact that I wanted to stay in earth science industries in some way. By that point, I was in the third year of uni, and like I said, I was doing the engineering geology course at Plymouth, or one of the modules and stuff, and that was all. We're getting all these stories from this bit of a legend guy called Jim Griffiths. He was giving us all these mad stories about bribing his way out of Addis Ababa and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. Fancy that.
Then you've gone into a ground investigation contractors, large ground investigation contractors, and worked at sort of many interesting projects throughout your time. We actually met on HS2 on a Banbury project when I was a freelance engineer and geologist. Can you give us some highlights of the projects you worked on whilst at the whilst there at the ground investigation contractors?
I worked for geotechnical engineering for about 4.5 years. Did some great work, great projects all over the country. I would encourage any youngster to at least do a couple of years at a ground investigation contractor, just because the amount of site time you get and site experience. We were going one job to the next job to the next job to the next. Obviously, it was pretty hectic at the time, but it was enjoyable. Like you said, did a fair bit of work on the HS2, the Banbury to Aylesbury section. A lot of chalk, a lot of deep holes. That was pretty fun. Done some cool jobs up in Cumbria on the Carlisle Settle Railway. Just jobs everywhere. It was week to week, constant site, which was great and good experience. And did some good stuff. Manchester Airport. Yeah, we're on drilling almost underneath the aircraft at one point over the night. Yeah, loads of rail work, loads of highways, bit of substation stuff. Really diverse stuff. Yeah, it was good, rounded. And you get a good feel for the geology around the UK as well that way, because we were working everywhere. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Good gig. Enjoyed it.
How did you find it? How did you find the rail work? So it's not something I've actually done myself. I've came close to working on some rail a few times, but never actually done it. How does that kind of differ?
It's been a few years since I've done any rail work, so I'll be speaking back in a good few years ago now. But a lot of the stuff we were doing were night works, so they would take possession of the rail over a weekend night, usually weekend nights, where it was quiet. They just cut the rail off. Then you'd have to get in, do your bits and bobs, and get out before they reopened it. Occasionally, they'd take possession over a whole weekend, or now and again you'd be working during the day as well. But night works is more common. But there was I remember the risk assessments were pretty rigorous, and sometimes you turn up ready to work, and then they'd be like, sorry lads, there's a train coming through, we can't work tonight. And you go, okay, cool, go home. But some nights you'd be on work until dawn. So it was pretty good. You get some interesting characters out there, and they got a whole other language. The rail lads, it's like everything's like abbreviated, and you got to get tuned into it. But no, it's all right. It's cool. It's good.
So after you were at the geotechnical engineering, you went to a consultancy. So can you just let us know how that sort of differs from the previous role? What were the fundamental differences? How was it
main difference. So I was in
different on a day to day?
At geotechnical engineering, we were out pretty much constantly, which is good when you're at the start of your career. Really good. Moved over to WIG in Cardiff, who I believe now are called Tetra Tech. And basically it was much more of a 50-50. You did the sort of project engineer role where a lot of the times you would have a project, you'd either tender it or you'd get given it after tender, and then you'd hire the subcontractors, do the risk assessment, run the project, do the report, schedule labs, and then bill it, all that sort. So it was a bit more of a whole all-encompassing sort of approach. I did a bit more, got a bit more experience with the contaminated land risk assessments and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, it was good change. Something that I was after at the time. Stood me in good stead for future stuff as well.
Yeah, so a lot more sort of cradle to grave, see the project from inception to completion.
On other people's projects as well. But a bit more of a wider approach. Yeah, but definitely using the site experience from the last place was pretty handy anyway.
So people often sort of go from the GI contractors to the consultancies, and they have plenty of experience, but on the other side you get people that go straight from university straight into the consultancies, but they generally don't know the ins and outs at that point. But someone like yourself that comes from an experienced ground investigation background, you can certainly add a lot more value to the to the project, I think. Did you sort of find that was the case when you were there?
But no, definitely. I think having the site experience gives you context for where these magical numbers that we create from SPTs and lab results, how they're collected, and what that actually represents spatially. Like if you can sort of visualize that a bit better, I think you can understand. Yeah, we're sort of characterizing the ground, but it's not like down to the millimeter. You know what I mean? I think that sometimes can get lost in translation sometimes. But I'd encourage any youngsters, even if they're coming off the back of a master's because I didn't do a master's. I went from Plymouth to geotech and all of that. So I think a lot of the kids that do or a lot of the young adults that do masters go straight into consultancies, which is fine. But I think the company should be making an effort to get them onto site and understanding things, which I'm sure they do. But you can get that site experience by go and work for a GI contractor for a year and a half. 2 years. It's not a long period of time, and I think if you can get out as much as possible in your early years, it'll stand you in good stead, definitely. And I think you'll progress faster as well, especially if you've also got the master's background behind you.
So then you decided to move to Australia then.
So I left WIG in February of 2019 with the aim of doing some traveling. So I went over to New Zealand. Bought a van, travelled around New Zealand for a year, worked in the kitchen, washing dishes. Nice. Yeah, it was all good. Learned to ski. Yeah, that was like, right.
Really?
I've gone straight from school to uni to work. I'm having a bit of fun time. So I had a fantastic time. And then at that time, at the end of that year, I was fully expecting to come back to the UK, but I had a friend of mine who I used to work with at Geotech, called George Cooper. He was then in Australia. He moved to Australia, working for the company that I ended up working for. And whilst I was in New Zealand, he was like in contact with me going, we got a bit of work going over here, get yourself over. So I thought, yeah, great. I've just finished the year of backpacking and eating cans of beans and stuff like that. I was like, I could probably do with 6 to 8 months of work here, just get a bit of cash and then go home. I thought this could be, and I've always had the ambition of going to Australia as well. When I first started working for Geotech, a couple of the engineers that I was working for had come back from Australia, so I was getting all these stories about working in the outback and like driving around in 4x4s and stuff. And I thought, that sounds pretty cool. I always fancied it, but never quite knew how to go about it. And then my network came through to me for me again, and managed to secure work. I went over on a working holiday visa, secured some work, and ended up working out in Australia. Again, I only meant to be in Australia for a year or so, but then the pandemic hit, and then I remember that April of 2020. Actually, it was my first job on a mine. I was eating my dinner in the mess hall, and it was that week when everything was shutting down. Like all the sporting events were going, borders were going up, all of that, and I was thinking, right, well, that's me done for. Then I better try and get as much money as possible and get home. But then, for whatever reason, Western Australia especially ended up in a being okay, and they managed to cut themselves off effectively enough that they could continue, especially the mining operations that are pretty keen to continue that, and they managed to do it pretty well. So at that point, it was like, right, might as well stay out here for a couple of years now. Rode it out, and now I'm home again.
So then you went to work for one of the companies out there. So you secured a permanent position there. Then
I think I wasn't permanent initially, because I went over on a working holiday visa. So I wasn't permanent initially, but it was.
Okay, so you're kind of freelance. You've done a bit of freelance work.
I was an employee, but I wasn't full time. But it was like, I think it's just the way the visas worked. So I was working for them. I was exclusively working for this company, 4DG. It was good. Yeah, really, really good. So, yeah, I managed to get some work with them through a friend of mine, and then eventually ended up on a working visa, of which I was permanent to the point of my visa. Yeah, so that was good.
Okay, so I know when it goes the other way, people from Australia, we've got a couple in a contract at the moment. They come over a youth mobility visa. Come over here and do a couple of years, and either if they can secure sponsorship, etc., and then they can continue, or some people just go back.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak.
And it works both ways. Some people, actually, we've got an Australian company wanting us to provide them with some people as well.
UK Ground Investigate. Yeah, I can speak about the visas. That's because it can be a bit of a minefield sometimes. I went over on a working holiday visa, which anyone under 30 can secure. That gives you a year in the country. You can then earn another year if you do like 3 months of remote work, regional remote work. So a lot of the quite a common route in is to get a working holiday visa, go over. That buys you a year basically in which to secure some employment, and then generally if you get on okay during that, if you get some work and you get on okay during that initial period, the company may or may not look to put you onto a working visa, a temporary skills visa, so a work visa essentially. Certain companies will be looking to do this, other companies won't, so you probably want to be trying to work out, if you want to stay over there for longer, you probably want to work out whether that company is in a position to offer you the visa. The company I worked for specialised in working in the Pilbara region, which is far northwest. You might remember it from sort of BIFs and banded iron formations and stuff. It's a prime iron ore producing area in Australia, and one of the prime ones in the world. Yeah. But we were working on mine expansions, mining infrastructure, rails, pipelines, conveyors, haul roads, mining facilities, all of that sort of stuff. So everything was dialed up in terms of size and just the vastness and the remoteness of the areas. You didn't have to worry about going in between farmers' fields or crossing roads or sort of all of that sort of stuff. Generally, someone would come in with a bulldozer before, create you a little path, and you just work off that, or you create your own. Yeah, so that was one of the main differences. Also, you're acutely aware of, like, if anything goes wrong, you're quite a long way from home. So even if you forget some equipment, like, it's costly, delays, time and money to get, like, even if it's something really simple. If you can't get it locally in the local town, then you got to get it air freighted up. So, like, preparation beforehand, you got to get everything, your kit sorted. It's like planning like a mini expedition, if you know what I mean. And then obviously the safety side of things as well, for good reason. Pretty keen on all of that. Good. A lot of it was.
How was that?
Sense in it. You see the need for it. Working in and around these large facilities, like, there was some big equipment moving around. You're talking like dump trucks, size of a semi-detached house, like, often with no drivers in them. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's some big equipment around. So everything was, we had to, prior to going up to site, we had to submit some pretty rigorous health and safety, environmental plans, management plans, all of that. If it's not on your method statement, it's not happening. And if your method statement needs tweaking, then we'll have a chat about it. We'll tweak it, and then we'll find a new method. It's always and everyone signs up to everything. It was pretty rigorous, but I haven't been in and around the UK ground investigation scene for the last 3 or 4 years anyway. So I imagine things are ramping up on the UK side as well. But yeah, and a lot of it was sort of needed anyway. Like, you don't want to be getting sunstroke. You don't want to be getting bitten by a snake. You don't want to be breaking down in the middle of nowhere with no help. So it was all like, it was all stuff that was all pretty good, pretty needed. With these iron ore mining facilities, there's basically massive quarries, blow up a bit of hillside, you use a big digger to load up these trucks. The trucks go to the crusher, they go back to the digger. So there's generally a circuit, in some of the newer facilities, it sort of lent itself to bringing in autonomous, because they're always striving for advancements in technology and safety. And unfortunately, if you take a human out of it and put a computer in place, if you're doing a repetitive task, then sometimes that can be safer, or deemed as safer anyway. A lot of the facilities had drivers. Yeah, I found them to be fairly similar. There's a few little bits and bobs. Like you measure an RQD, they do it off the opposite axis and stuff. But yeah, generally fairly similar. The biggest thing to get used to, for me anyway, was like when doing test pits and logging soil, was that the soil's all dry. Like, you got to hydrate it if you want to find out if there's any like silt and clay in it. You can't just see off. You can't just pick some up and be like, oh yeah, cool, that's clay. So it's because you got to spit in your hand basically to hydrate it enough to find out what the texture is. Yeah, well, or use your water and put it in there anyway. Whatever
works.
But various different quirks. But working with the drillers, a lot of the drillers they were running like HQ3 and stuff, so smaller diameter core, which was a bit nicer for the core boxes. They seemed a bit less bothered about getting 100 mil diameter and stuff, but it wasn't a great, like, in terms of the actual nitty gritty of the work. If you're doing test pits, you're doing test pits. You're doing drilling, but it was the environment in which was the main thing to adapt to. I would definitely say if people were going over, then they probably want to familiarise yourself with the geology, because like we don't tend to have banded iron formation in the UK, and a lot of the rock is so old that it doesn't always look like what you think it should. No. It's in the billions rather than tens of millions. A lot of the stuff that we were looking at anyway, so it doesn't always look like what you think a basalt should look like. Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's
okay, and I suppose adapting
to that. Went out with same thing. Baco JCBs and stuff. With these big projects, it's quite nice actually. I quite enjoy test trial pitting over there, because a lot of with these big projects, you'd have huge amounts of test, 200 kilometers worth of pipeline. You can just sort of like alternatively sample because they're big. A lot of the times the material doesn't change too much. So if you've got two materials, you might be able to sample one from the higher stuff, one from the lower stuff, and the next one and alternate and stuff like that. So generally, you just take a couple of big bulk bags, and there wasn't too much environmental sampling, or I didn't come across too much environmental sampling anyway. So it made trial pitting quite straightforward.
Did you have to wear any sort of anything to protect your breathing in while doing that? So I'd imagine it would have been a pretty dusty environment. We would have dust
masks on hand. We wouldn't necessarily wear them all the time like you would. Again, that was dust is a huge factor. On some sites, particularly in and around the mines, they would have water trucks flying around, spraying water on the roads, try and keep the dust down, because that's a hazard when you're driving as well as when you're breathing. But in general, we would, because you have the run of you got a big, huge area, you got the run of the place, we would set up. So the dust would be going away from us, or the dry, so the dust would be going away from us, and like when you were shoveling the bags and stuff, you would consider that But if it was getting windy, we would chuck on a dust mask. Yeah, I mean the PPE in general was just get yourself covered, long sleeves, wide brimmed hat, glasses everywhere, hats. Yeah, it was sand and just drink. Well, we would always have like 5 liters of ice water with us as well. You might want to bring some electrolytes. Like you would just never go anywhere without your water. It was just like part of your routine. You just have to. Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah,
and you go down.
You get yourself in trouble, wouldn't you? Really, if you did.
Working in 37 to, I think 42 or 45 was the highest I worked in. And it's hot. You've just got it's hot. In the same way as you go out in the middle of winter and you get drenched from the rain. You got within 10 minutes you're drenched with your own sweat, and you're like, right, well that's me sort of soggy for the day, but just in a different way. But you just got to organize your work around. Yeah. You got to manage your own fatigue. So you organize what you're doing, when you're doing it. Make sure you got enough breaks. You use the vehicle. If you're in the middle of nowhere, use the vehicle as your cool zone. Sort of leave it running and things like that. You're just in charge of your own, keeping yourself alive, basically. Yeah. And it's pretty sensible in which to do that. you get used to these little things. Yeah. Like at the start, obviously, you need someone to tell you all
it's important thing.
But then you'll learn quite quickly, and then it becomes part of your routine. And that is what I would say is the biggest difference. Is learning how to look after yourself in these environments and on these sites, because a lot of these big sites, in the same way as a HS2 site has its own special rules, a national grid site has its own rules. Not necessarily too different, but they might be focusing in on something more specific. So each sort of different site might have its own rules. So you've got to tailor yourself, your behaviour and expectations to what they want. Because if there's any incidents, it's like, right, shut the job down, get on a plane, go back. Let's invest. So, yeah, getting it right is the utmost importance, and it's like,
very costly thing to happen as well.
More, I would like to say there's a bit more cash floating around in the Western Australian ground investigation industry, but you're still focused on the costs. But I would say the safety side of it is a lot more. It's safety above everything, right? Someone sees a problem, right? Let's shut down. Let's have a talk about it. What are we going to do? Yeah, it's you could get to a job and it wouldn't be a problem to spend a couple of days, maybe 5 days, just working out the permits, and like someone's not okay, the roads aren't ready, just hang out. We're going to do this. So it's all very like you're not working until it's right. Until everything's in place. It's not just turn out, right, let's get going. We have pre-start meetings before where we're going to plan what we're doing. We're going to talk about the sorts of risks that are going to be happening today. What we're going to be looking out for, right? Okay, we're going to be looking out for hand injuries today. It's going to be hot today. There might be some thunder coming in later. What's the procedure for thunder? We do this, and it's all like pre-start meetings every day, all of that. Blow on with the breatho. So you've got to blow zeros in the morning, generally on a lot of sites. So you can go and have a few beers in the evening in the mine camp, but generally a lot of sites I was on anyway, you would blow on a breatho in the morning, and if you had any not even the drink drive limit, you had to blow zeros. So obviously I was pretty knackered by the end of the day, so I didn't do a great deal of drinking on those sites. But some guys could, like, they knew the exact chemistry of how to the sip of how many they could have. But generally the site.
I was going to say, I imagine drinking after it being so hot all day is probably the last thing that I'd want to do. I'd imagine,
and a lot of awareness about hydration, and obviously drinking's not going to help that. Like, keeping yourself hydrated to a good, because you can go downhill pretty fast in that sort of environment. And I've done it myself, where like if you don't keep drinking and keep your hydration up, you can go like
definitely.
If you don't maintain it for half hour, 45 minutes, you can start feeling a bit like like I think, what was that RQD, and I'd be like, wait a minute, I would have remembered that. I need to start drinking a bit more, and then eventually you get into the routine of just keep keep drinking. Our office was based in Perth. We would do projects in the Pilbara. So we would plan a project from the office, get a flight out, usually early, get up to site, hire a vehicle, go and pick up the gear, and go and get going. And then once you're on the mine, the mine camp, so all of these iron ore mining facilities which we were generally working on, it was a massive camp. So you stay in dongas, or basically prefab rooms. You get like 3 or 4 to a block. You got single beds, like small little room, just about enough room to swing a cat or do some press ups or whatever in the evening. I don't want to say a prison cell because it's not, because we were allowed to leave. But if you can imagine, like a small little room with a shower and it was fine.
Okay, small.
It was good. And then you'd generally we'd work 12 hours, so you'd be on the mine from 5:30 to 5:30 or whatever shift pattern you were doing. So if you want breakfast beforehand, you've got to be up earlier. Generally, I was up like 4:15, 4:30. I'd have a shower, go and have some breakfast at 5. Get down to the mine, pre-start meeting at 5:30 in the offices. Oh, wow. You fill your waters up, make sure you got your ice. Have we got the paperwork for today? Let's sign all this, sign that, talk about what we're doing. Get out, do your 12 hours of work, or 11 or so. Get back to the office, drop your stuff off. Back to the room for like 5:30, 6. Generally, I would be eaten and showered by 6:30, and then you've probably only got, I would only have about 2 hours worth of energy in me then to, I don't know, speak to friends or watch something on TV or just relax, just get out of work. Yeah. So it was very much like eat, sleep, work, repeat, 14 days straight, 12 hours a day. We were booking 84-hour weeks times 2 times 84-hour weeks. Then you have a week off. That's a normal shift pattern. Call it a 2 and 1, 2 weeks on, 1 week off, which sounds like a lot, which it is. It is hard, but like you find yourself just getting into it. If you can set your routine and
I was going to say it sounds exhausting. It sounds a very hostile environment to be with the sun beating down on you all the time. I'm not that keen in the UK with the sun, so Australia seems it'd be hard going, I suppose, but it's definitely a worthwhile thing then. Do you earn more money whilst being over there and doing that? I'd imagine you pretty much do.
Earns more money. But yeah, it was a hostile environment, but it was fun and exciting and all the rest of it. And you do get used to these things as well. It sounds like if someone had said that to me before I went over, I'd have been like, oh Christ, can I hack this? And even when I got the job, I was like, until you get up there, I was like, oh, can I actually hack this? But then you generally people do, or if they don't, they might be able to find an office-based role. It's not. You just find out what you can do. Yeah, and there's only one way to find out, isn't it? But yeah, generally it was substantially more well paid than the UK, which everyone sort of knows about. I think you are working for it as well. Like we was working 2 weeks straight and things. But then once the project was over, you might have a little period, or the way my company worked anyway, you might have a period in the office where you're writing up reports, tendering for other work, that sort of stuff. So I tended to put my hand up for as much project site work.
So what were the attitudes to geotechnical work and ground investigation work?
Generally, the attitudes was pretty good because everything was a bit sort of slower, and there's a bit more money in the job. It was like, and a lot of people were sort of fairly switched on with you. You would always sometimes run into people who weren't quite on board, and you might have to just sort of try and give them a bit of context as to what you're doing and why you're doing it. But yeah, no, generally people were, the pace, I don't want to say the pace was slow because it wasn't, but it was like, we're doing this, then we're doing this, then we're doing this, all by the book sort of thing. So a lot of people were pretty well, pretty on board with the process, really. Yeah, that's what I found anyway. So, yeah, a lot of people are pretty professional because they're not up on those big mining sites. They're not scared. If you're not going to get with a program, they'll just go, right, get on a plane, see you later. So the majority of the people, a vast majority of people that I interacted with were extremely professional, knew what to do, why they were doing it. the paperwork was the paperwork. If you don't want to do it, then that's it's not negotiable really. Most people were with the program. They were quite happy. If my idea was that I would do it before I got to too much of an advanced age, because once I haven't got children or anything like that, so my idea was like, right, let's do a bit of traveling, and great, I've got no sort of major ties back home, let's go and do a bit of work abroad while I can, and I've managed to scratch that itch now, and I'm really pleased with what I've done and how it's gone, and now I'm happy to come back home and settle back into a career back home and stuff. So yeah, I think I would say if you've got any ambitions, and you haven't, especially if you haven't got sort of children or a house or anything like that, then you're in prime position. But even if you have got children in a house, there's also ways of going about it. It's just these things are slightly more, got to think a little bit more about it, haven't you?
Definitely, you could.
There's loads of ways to do it.
Children or a house shouldn't hold you back. You can rent out the house, you can sell it, you can take the kids with you, or you can just live the standard thing here, which most people do, I suppose. But I mean, I've been traveling around Thailand for 10 months. We came back a couple of months ago, and it was fantastic.
It's available for anyone, and even if you're slightly older,
exactly,
older than 30, you might not be able to get on with a visa situation. There's always ways of doing it. You just have to go about it in a different way. Generally, a lot of people get themselves on a working holiday visa, which is open to anyone. Go over, and then you've got time then to secure yourself work, and then. But if you're over 30, I believe they don't give you one if you're over 30. So you've got to hook up with a company beforehand, and they have to sponsor a visa for you, which is, there's no two ways about it. It's slightly trickier, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. Anecdotally, the Australian sort of job market is their skills. They've got a skills shortage over there going on, so it could be a good time to do that sort of stuff.
Fair enough. So now that you're back, then Patrick, what's your next move? What does the future lie ahead for you?
Trying to sort it out at the moment. Basically, I've had a nice summer off. Coming into autumn and the start of winter, I've had a good few months off, which has been fantastic. Yeah. Enjoyed myself, go out and about, all of that. So I'm in the process now of settling in, trying to find some stuff. Looking mainly around South Wales at the moment. I'm in sort of talking to a few different places at the moment. So yeah, we'll see what comes of that. But got nothing nailed on at the moment. Yeah, looking to advance my career from South Wales, I think. No, thanks for having me on. Hope it helps someone.